Hey Mayhem, my name's True, and I want to talk to you about selflessness. I know if somebody were coming to me and wanting to talk to me about selflessness, my red flags would be going up. I'd be like, are you about to talk about something that sounds like codependence? Because I think we're all maybe aware, maybe we're not. That codependence can be real unhealthy. It's when we help others at our own expense, like we help them instead of taking good care of ourselves. So I just want to be clear that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about, I think if more of us did it when we had the energy and the inspiration to do it, it would help things be better in the world. But it needs to be, when we help others, when we serve others, it needs to be done from a place of fullness. Like we're fully rested, all our needs are met, or maybe not all our needs, most of our needs are met. And we really feel like helping people. So, examples of this could be little things. It doesn't have to be, hours and hours of big effort or anything like that. There have been commercials on TV about, paying it forward, about helping someone. You've seen them. I forget what they were advertising for, but it was, somebody would open the door for somebody else, and somebody else would pick up something that got dropped for the other person, and that person would help with this other thing, and then, before you know it, we've watched, the whole commercial where somebody's passing along the favor to someone else, and I think eventually it comes back around to the person who initiates it, and somebody helps them. So it's based on this idea that we're all interdependent, we're all interconnected, and so when we help each other and we help someone else without expecting something back, then it helps everyone. So we live in a culture that thrives and really pushes competition. Competition's not a bad thing, but it's just not the only way to relate. There's also cooperation or, selflessness, being of service. Sometimes I see things in the media that sort of touch on this. Like, I don't know if you've seen the movie Beautiful Mind. It's based on the life of John Nash. And he was an economist but came up with his own Nash equilibrium theory, which was when it's a game theory. So, like, if, when everybody considers everyone else, then the whole group is better off. So I think another way of saying it is when everyone makes the best decision, considering everyone else's decision, then everyone's better off. Like in the movie, it was, well, if everybody goes for the blonde, then nobody's going to, all the guys go for the blonde, then nobody's going to go home, meet a girl. But if, they all go for different girls, maybe the blonde doesn't end up with anybody, but they all end up, having somebody talk to through the evening. So that's one example of, in some ways, selflessness, not going for the highest personal goal, but going for a goal that satisfies more people's needs is one example. Another example I've seen in the media is Ubuntu, which is part of a theology that Desmond Tutu embraced. I am because we are. In other words, if we all share, then we can all, be optimized. It can optimize every individual in the group when we all share. So those are the kinds of places I'm coming from with this idea of selflessness. Somebody was asking me, okay, does selflessness really exist, or is it altruism? And I was just looking up those words. Selflessness is concerned more with others than with self. It's more of a state of being, is how this dictionary defined it. Whereas altruism is high regard to devotion. It's more of like a philosophy. So selflessness is a result of altruism. That's one way of looking at it. So some of the things, a lot of people talk about how things are going, like in the U.S. or across the planet. There's a lot of countries that have these conservative powers who don't consider the whole group, they consider, profit possibly ahead of humanity. And so the rest of us are left dealing with, how do we cope with these people that are in power? How do we optimize our own well-being? How do we take care of ourselves and each other? And so for me, I like to tap into resources that are bigger than individuals, bigger than us. Like I'm talking about spiritual resources. And it's not so much that it matters what you believe, just so that you believe it. To quote Shepherd Book when he was talking to Mal on the movie Serenity again. It's just, to find that value system or that spiritual resource that supports you and your vision for your life, and to, tap into that in times of stress or when things aren't, when the powers that be aren't considering the whole group, just considering themselves. So again, it's not codependence. There's this whole concept of putting your own oxygen mask on first before you help anybody else. That's certainly where I'm coming from. So, make sure you get all your rest, that you're healthy and your diet's good and exercise and all, as much as you feel called. This is not about, you must blah, 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 but just, take good care of yourself. And when you're in a good place, it naturally, people naturally want to help others. And to be the change that you want to see in the world, to quote Gandhi. These are just ideas for how to make an impact, things that we can do as individuals to try to help the world be a better place. So some of the questions that may come up, I know they do for me, when I think about or contemplate selflessness, is how do you give but not get taken advantage of? Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me, right? So we don't want to give to people that are going to hurt us. We want to avoid being victimized by psychopaths, sociopaths, narcissists. I'm sure we all know have our favorite narcissist in our world. And there are ways to be kind and compassionate with people that might not have our well-being, have that as any part of their interest. But we can still take care of ourselves and be compassionate without putting ourselves at risk. Kindness, those kinds of things. We also want to be careful not to give to people whose needs are so great that there's no end. And we can give as much as we have the energy for, but as soon as we notice any kind of resentment or any kind of lack of appreciation from the person we're giving to, that's just a cue that we need to pause and rest and take care of ourselves and before we keep giving. So, and plus there are systems in place in the U.S. and other countries to help people using like tax money or whatever, so that there are programs in place to support people. I don't know that there are very few places where they're adequate, but so giving more and helping more is always a possibility. Just be careful and make sure you're not giving more than you have resources to give, so that you're not depleting yourself and taking care of yourself while you're helping others. So there are benefits, and there are things about selflessness that can make us feel great. They're gratifying. It's always, a lot of people when we help them, they'll say thanks. That always feels good. There's always something wonderful about meaningful work. There's a lot of meaningless work out there. So to do something meaningful, to be in relationship with someone, to ask, do you need help with that? What would be helpful for you? So it's always important to ask first, because we don't want to just stomp in and save the day and without asking anybody what they would like or what would work best for them. I'm a social worker, and we have a long history of doing that. That doesn't always work best, but now we know, to ask first what would be helpful, and to let the person who's receiving the help guide us and show us what would be most helpful. So developing those relationships, having meaningful work, but it's supporting other people's joy gives us joy. Generosity feels good, being a hero, stepping in when I'm sure I have had friends that do EMS and, work on ambulances and stuff and save lives, and it's very gratifying work. I have lots of friends that are social workers. It's very gratifying work to be there for people, to work those compassion muscles and to have compassion for others. While we're talking about compassion, we've also had some podcasts on empathy. Empathy is important, but I think compassion's more important because we haven't been through everything that everyone else has been through, but we can always want to become kind. Also, the idea of ahimsa, the Hindu word for harmlessness, to be kind, to be supportive. These kinds of things we can do even if we've never been through what the person that we're helping is going through. Also, I work with people that have, they're on the autism spectrum or have Asperger's, or what we used to call Asperger's. And, sometimes their empathy is, it's a disability. They don't have it, but they can understand compassion. We can all understand compassion and kindness because even if we can't relate to what somebody's been through, we know what it's like when somebody's kind to us and how good that feels. So when we're doing that for someone else, we know we can also remember when somebody did that for us and how good that feels. And plus just doing the right thing. All these things can feel really good. Also, selflessness is, you can look at it from an existential point of view. It can, again, it can give meaning to your life as far as developing those relationships, helping other people. It's a way to cope with depression. Getting outside the self and, turning out and seeing what is needed for people around us. And there's this mirror to it where when we help others, when we're giving to others, we're receiving. It's, one of those paradoxes of human nature, reality, or an irony, that when we give, we receive. It's one of those things you can't really explain. You just have to experience it. I've experienced it quite a bit, and it's brought me a lot of joy, so I can speak to you from experience. But you can also just try it, You see somebody, you think maybe they need some help, maybe they dropped something and they are having a hard time reaching it, or, maybe they need some help with the door or carrying a box or something, and you just say, would you like help with that? And just see what it's like to help someone just in the moment. Another part of this that keeps it from being codependent or something that might be harmful is to not do it out of obligation, but to do it out of a desire to help, to do it out of your own impulse, your own chi. And that way that maintains your freedom. It's, if you want to promise to help somebody and follow through, that's great. But there's also a way of being selfless that's without obligation. So if somebody asks you for help and you agree, you can say, as far as I can tell for now, or, you can put, it works out for me today. I can't speak about tomorrow. There are ways you can communicate with people that you're helping to let them know that you'll be there for them when you're available, but that there may be times when you need to take care of yourself and get rest, or, have entertainment, have fun. Fun is so important. So, you don't want to help somebody when you're feeling like you're lacking, or like, well, unless you're, I just said it's helpful for depression, and it is. So, depression can feel like an emptiness. So to help and be selfless as a way to cope with depression might initially feel like you're giving from a place of emptiness, but the act of giving will help refill you up. And so you might just try baby steps in that case. Something else about selflessness and giving to others, I don't know if you saw the movie Cloud Atlas, but it was a great story about an illustration of how positive acts can We just don't know how far out they go, how far out their impact goes. They go out for generations and generations. There's a psychological theory that I'm real fond of called family constellation work, developed by Bert Hellinger, where part of what's going on with us in our current issues is that we take on issues from our ancestors, whether it's someone who was forgotten or someone who is somehow not got out of place from their family, from their tribe. And so it impacts the whole group. And so sometimes we have issues that we bring forward from past generations. So the reverse of this can also be true, in that if we're helping others and being selfless, that those positive impacts can impact our children and our children's children for generations. So when you're helping others and being selfless, as you have the energy to do, you're also not only helping our society and our world to be better, but you're also helping future generations of humanity to have, more peace, more harmony, more all kinds of good things. Yeah, so another aspect to consider is sometimes there's a social cost for generosity. There have been studies with children, for instance, that if a child was generous, but more generous than maybe some of their peers, the peers would resent them because their generosity was out of balance. So a way to avoid that kind of resentment from selflessness or generosity is to, again, only give when you have the energy to give, but then also to stop giving when you realize it's not being received. So to be sensitive and in the moment, to ask to see if somebody needs help, so to check in with the person that you want to help and support and make sure you're doing something that fits for them, because, we're each our own authorities. So just because somebody needs help doesn't mean they need pity or that they're not the authority on what would be best for them, right? So to check in, to be available, to support them in a way that would fit for them, and then to be present in the moment. And the minute that they're done, that it works, that it's complete, or either that or it doesn't fit anymore, to just sort of let go and be appreciative for that relationship, that connection that you had for a short time, or maybe it was a long time, and move on to the next thing. And then the next thing might be being good to yourself and having fun, or connecting with another friend who may not need anything, but y'all can just connect. And that's the thing is being selfless and helping others can also help us be better at asking for help whenever we need help, because nobody's an island. We're all interconnected and we all need each other. So I think that's all I have to say about selflessness. There are a lot of good reasons why to be selfless, but I think the bottom line is it feels good. Or I think it feels good. Yeah. So one of my inspirations for selflessness was also, I was mentioning spiritual resources before. One of them is a poem called the Zinsen Ming, or Faith Mind Inscription. I'm going to post a copy of it in the comments, and at the end of this podcast, I did a reading of it. So it's just something to contemplate if you want, if you feel like it. But, feel free to leave comments, and I think we might have a group discussion about this in the future. So keep on sharing. Hope y'all are having a good one. Zinsen Ming, or Faith Mind Inscription, written by ancient Zen poet Zheng Han. The Great Way isn't difficult for those who are unattached to their preferences. Let go of longing and aversion, and everything will be perfectly clear. When you cling to a hair's breadth of distinction, heaven and earth are set apart. If you want to realize the truth, don't be for or against. The struggle between good and evil is the primal disease of the mind. Not grasping the deeper meaning, you just trouble your mind's serenity. as vast as infinite space. It is perfect and lacks nothing. But because you select and reject, you can't perceive its true nature. Don't get tangled in the world. Don't lose yourself in emptiness. Be at peace in the oneness of things, and all errors will disappear by themselves. If you don't live the Tao, you fall into assertion or denial. Asserting the world is real, you're blind to its deeper reality. Denying the world is real, you're blind to the selflessness of all things. The more you think about these matters, the farther you are from the truth. Step aside from all thinking, and there is nowhere you can't go. Return to the root, you find the meaning. Chasing appearances, you lose their source. At the moment of profound insight, you transcend both appearances and emptiness. Don't keep searching for the truth. Just let go of your opinions. For the mind in harmony with the Tao, all selfishness disappears with not even a trace of self-doubt. You can trust the universe completely. All at once you are free, with nothing left to hold on to. All is empty, brilliant, perfect in its own being. In all the world of things as they are, there is no self and no non-self. If you want to describe its essence, the best you can say is not two. In this not two, nothing is separate, and nothing in the world is excluded. The enlightened of all times and places have entered into this truth. In it there is no gain or loss. One instant is 10,000 years. There is no here, no there. Infinity is right before your eyes. The tiny is as large as the vast when objective boundaries have vanished. The vast is as small as the tiny when you don't have external limits. Being is an aspect of non-being. Non-being is no different from being. Until you understand this truth, you won't see anything clearly. One is all and all are one. When you realize this, what reason for holiness or wisdom? The mind of absolute trust is beyond all thought, all striving, is perfectly at peace, for in it there is no yesterday, no today, and no tomorrow.